Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Nick, and today we have a very exciting episode, part 2 of the India series from Kisma's trip. This one's called It's Not What You Think.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Hello, Kisma.
Well, hello there. Mystic next door. What's going on?
Well,
part 2.
I know that you have quite a heady topic for us today. A little light reading.
A little light. The world's an illusion. That's not what you think, guys. Just whatever. No, it is. It's heavy, but we're going to bring it into practical form. I hope so.
All right. Well, we'll do our level best at that.
But I think
strap yourselves in, everybody. Kisma's about to go cosmic.
No, I mean, I could never assume to teach what I learn at the Vedanta Academy. That would be like ridiculous, but it's kind of fun to look at. You know, as I was talking about in the last episode, it gets so thick with the philosophy that sometimes like, I'm going to pull my brains out of my head and throw them on the wall. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to share just a little bit of what that is? And of course, we'll have a link to the reading material in the show notes, but here's a fun little paragraph for y'all. And this comes from Swami Parthasarathy's Vedanta treatise, The Eternities. And it really is the eternities. And it's chapter 19, The Illusion or Maya. Maya means not that. So if someone to say, where'd the world come from? How did the world start? Etc. He writes this paragraph: time, space, and causation do not have a beginning or an end. Time stretches limitlessly, both backward and forward. It can go back endlessly, project forward endlessly. So does space extend on all sides without boundaries. It is all pervading. Also, causation seems to have come from eternity and going into eternity, and time, space, and causation constitute the world. Hence, there is no beginning or end to the world. I repeat, hence, there is no beginning or end to the world. The question of when, whence, wherefore this world does not arise. The question has no answer. It is beyond the scope of the intellect, beyond human comprehension. Those who try to answer this question empirically are confused, confounded. They go in circles and get nowhere. The world that you experience now in the waking state appears beginningless, endless. It is very much like your dream. The dream world also has no boundaries. The dreamer views his world exactly as the waker you view your world. The dreamer's intellect also cannot understand the origin of the dream world that he experiences. Neither can it conceive the end of the dream world. But the dreamer does not realize the limitation of his intellect. All the confusion and agitation that the dreamer goes through can be overcome only when he wakes up, when the dreamer becomes the waker. Then there is no longer the questioner and the question. The waker instantly understands the nature of the entire phenomenon of the dream and the absurdity of the erstwhile queries and worries of the dreamer. The confusion and agitation that the waker experiences is much like that of the dreamer. You as the waker now question the origin, the meaning and purpose of the waking world. When, whence, wherefore this world. You are bewildered by the mystery of this world. This perennial problem can be completely solved only by spiritual awakening. On realizing your supreme self, the waking world is then seen just as another illusion, like the dream. All your ignorance and the consequent mental agitation vanish. You reach the enlightened state of knowledge and bliss.
Wake up, everybody.
It's just like,
let the record reflect that I said anything read from the end of this this book is going to be really,
it's so thick
really
and so heady.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to chew on it just for a moment so you understand like what goes on at this Vedanta Academy, which is so amazing. And, when you think about it, though, that whole dreamer and waker is such a great thing to ponder. We get into a dream and we're so certain this is what's happening. It's so real. It's so tangible. And then we wake up. And so I think when we apply this to everyday life, is how often are we in the middle of a conversation in a circumstance and we're so convinced we know. We're so convinced we know what the other person is thinking, saying, doing, or we're so convinced that people are out to get us or to lift us up. And all of a sudden we start spinning into a non-reality.
I think that's probably, in everyday life, like that's the real value of this whole
totally
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Just because he's taking it the step beyond, he's saying that beyond this is like the reality, and that's great, and we're still here.
Yeah, we are still here. This is like right now our reality for all intensive purposes.
So I think it's fair to say to people, just that word of caution that the further that you go down that rabbit hole, it doesn't necessarily actually help your life to help you live a more productive, more happy life in general, more connection or better relationships or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily help you to constantly look at this world as nothing but an illusion,
mm-hmm.
because there's a really strong tendency then to like, well, when you don't like it or things aren't going your way or you're getting frustrated, or, if you're just kind of sick of feeling like trapped in your human skin, well, then you start to live outside of the,
right.
The constricts of our, confines of our world.
Right.
And it's not a productive way to live.
Right.
At all. And he'll be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't check out.
Yeah. It's not about that at all. But there is, I think I'm sure, in his years of teaching, he's seen that, and probably some pretty extreme cases where there is a tendency. And I think people are doing that enough already.
Yeah.
If you look at it brings in kind of an interesting, I think, angle of this conversation of like our virtual reality.
Yeah, for sure.
The boxes that we live inside of, the little metal boxes with all the gadgets and everything like that. It's like people are checking out already.
I mean, we're taking the level of illusion to new highs. To new highs, like the artificial intelligence, the whatever. It's a new high of this is an illusion.
Right.
And it's a little bit scary because it's like, when did the world become so uncomfortable or so numbing or so uninspiring that we needed to bring in yet another 5,000 levels of illusion?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that it was just that it was so inspiring. I just think it's uninspiring or anything like that. I think it's more that people just they do it because they can.
They do it that they can. And, if we merge this a bit with kind of the teachings of the universal law, we are here to expand and grow and be better versions of ourselves. The principle of life force is to be expansive and to have more of all the good things. So I think there is that essence of, I want to expand, I want to grow. Like it's a new height. Mm-hmm. Yet when we lose our footing in the very world that we are meant to be in, it can be a little hazardous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a funny thing too. When people get a good groove going, they get some good things going on. It's like they often discount the things that they did that got them there.
Right.
They stop doing it in favor of the new bright and shiny things. And it's like, you stop that. And it's a little bit funny. Like I think a little bit of a parallel in our world today. It's like we've done and made some really amazing advancements, but what really got us here was community and working together and believing in one another. Being human, but we've abandoned a lot of that in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So to bring it back to this, that's one of the most useful things for me. And I don't know, you and I approach this differently, and we approach our practices pretty differently as well. For me, it's not something that I really need to dwell on as much as I really just. To me, it's like putting it into practice in my life.
Right.
And recognizing that my mind has this amazing truly amazing ability of imagination to create alternate realities that have absolutely nothing to do sometimes with what's actually going on. And so that little piece of information just from those couple paragraphs that you read is just that constant reminder that says, wait a second. Like there might be another another angle to this story. Maybe or this might not be true at all.
Exactly. Or the way I like to look at it is there's a more exquisite and eloquent version to this story.
Yes.
Because all of this, as you heard, it's like, as you reach the enlightened state of knowledge and bliss, right? On realizing your supreme self, this perennial problem can be completely solved only by spiritual awakening, on realizing your supreme self. So I like to think about that as like, okay, where can I take space and see that splash of the self? Maybe it's just a nuance or it's a hint, but to see things in a more exquisite and eloquent way.
Yeah.
And if we all did that, we'd be viewing life differently, and our perceptions, what's creating our reality, how we see our experiences and experience them.
Yeah. And I think the whole practice of like manifesting a life for yourself, like creating a vision for yourself and all of that, like it's evidence, like it's in line with this. It's saying that you can create something in your mind and then you can reflect it out into the world. And that's an amazing thing. I think where people miss the real spiritual awakening, and I don't want to discount that, because there is what I would call a spiritual awakening aspect to that, because you're waking up to a higher sense of your potential.
Absolutely.
And a higher sense of your power to create in the world. And there's nothing more spiritual than that. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think where people stop though, that really misses the meat of the whole conversation, is that it becomes about what you can create in the world. And that's it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, so you build a whole empire and you do all these amazing things, and that's wonderful. That is certainly not to take anything away from that. And there's, what all of the great teachers have always been saying is that there's something so far beyond all of that stuff. Right. That you can't even imagine.
Right. Can't even conceive.
And that's where it's at, man. Like that's the real thing. So that's what we ought to be going for.
Right. In the real way.
Right. And I don't think necessarily that they have to be separate. It's like you can only look for that, or you can only do that. Like, no, like do awesome things in the world and continue all of that stuff, because it's really part of the same path. And recognize, like he's saying right here, is like recognize that there's actually something beyond all of this experience that is like beyond and beyond. And it's just blissful. It's true bliss, which we have zero concept for.
Yeah. Yeah. Because our default will go to the lowest energetic common denominator. Oftentimes, I was just doing a video in my Facebook group, and if anybody wants to check it out, it's a video series on prosperity in kismaawake.com/groups. It's Codes of Consciousness in Facebook. But, we often go into the lack or the opposite of the extreme bliss because something happened when we were that little kid, or our safety was threatened, or our love was threatened. And it becomes this like seed or this weed that is deep within us. And that's what can get triggered. And that's what we can end up creating life from, which is going to be a big fat illusion.
Yeah.
And one that people get stuck in very, very easily.
Yeah.
So I think when we can wipe that slate clean, and just like this, it's like wake up. So the dreamer wakes up and is like, oh, that was a dream. So just to kind of get a little lofty, what if every moment that we were in some sort of anguish or anxiety or fear, we just said to ourselves, wake up out of this moment, because there is this essence that runs through you and supports you. And it's at least a little bit of a self wake up call.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let me see this differently. I don't have to be full of anxiety or fear or whatever. I can step in. I really see it visually as like you're stepping across the line into something that is so great and profound.
Yeah. I think even something as simple as that really needs to be approached with care. And people have to find their own way to it, whether through themselves or through mentorship or whatever that is. Because there is that really delicate balance of bypassing, the human experience and just saying, like, oh, that's not me, that's not me. And then they wind up just kind of stuffing it,
Right.
The other side of that is like, oh, well, you get really stuck in processing all of your emotions and all those things. And you just gave like such an amazing way to short circuit that whole mess and
Right.
just get back to the gold of who you are.
Right.
Right. But even with that, it's like, that's where these higher teachings, I think it just becomes really important to have conversation and dialogue around it to really understand what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're wanting to accomplish.
Exactly.
And going about it in a really intelligent way.
Right.
Because there's a ton of people out there we know, and have seen people, extremely successful people who stuff their emotions all day long.
Yeah.
And their feelings and all their, quote unquote negative thoughts. And it blows up on them.
Yeah. Eventually.
And it literally destroys their life and their health.
Or it just shows up from time to time and becomes very disruptive.
Yeah.
Some people function very well, supposedly with stuffing it down, but then it percolates and it causes fraction for sure.
Sooner or later. So, I just say that, like, I guess that will be my role, is the devil's advocate to say these higher teachings are always amazing and beautiful. And they really call us to something just so far beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point, is let it call you to that and remember to be a human being.
Yeah. Swami Parthasarathy has stated his worry is not that people don't understand Vedanta, it's that they misunderstand it.
Right.
And can be very easy to take teachings and words and power like this and misuse it and manipulate for one's own selfish desires to check out.
Yeah. Or just, I think, yes, absolutely that. And also just to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really like carelessly, but I guess carelessly is to just, to miss really important things for yourself and set yourself up for one of those falls.
Right.
Because that's spiritual pride.
Right.
I've heard Swamiji talk about that. I've heard all the students, any student with Vedanta that I've ever talked about or that I've ever, we've ever gotten into that. They all are like, that's the biggest caution is around spiritual pride and self-delusion.
Right.
The biggest caution ever because it sets you up for such a huge smackdown.
And it really is painful.
It's so painful.
Yeah.
It's so painful.
Yeah. So humility, having a sense of unselfishness, really allows the teachings to go far.
Yeah. And coming back to that paragraph that you just read, I think that's another thing that I take away from it is the humility of that humble attitude of like, yeah, man, I might not know.
Right.
Like I might have got this whole thing wrong.
Completely backwards, upside down, turned around.
It's totally possible.
Yeah.
Like I'm a human being. I have a mind. My mind does what it does. Like I do my best to keep it clean and clear and to keep my perception really accurate. And I'm a human being. And none of us can see what we can't see.
Right.
Which brings it back to the consistent self-study. And also the huge value for mentorship and guidance in this crazy.
It's tricky to do it alone.
Yeah, it really is.
He also in this chapter of the illusions, Maya, he talks about something called an illusion, intrinsic illusion specifically. But I'm just going to give the example.
Oh man,
because it's so good.
Kisma's going out now.
And I'm just going to keep
intrinsic illusion.
Let's just go straight for the example, which is a child's walking down a street. Say it's dusk. And the child sees a snake in the road, kind of freaks out, runs back and gets, his or her parents. The parents come over and they're like, no, it's a rope. And so the whole idea is like at the time the child sees the snake, does not see the rope. And then when the rope is revealed, the child no longer sees the snake. So they don't appear at the same time. Right. And it's like the same thing, a child turns on or gets up in the middle of the night and sees a ghost, which is, Swamiji says it's not a ghost, it's a post. It's like we misapprehend these things. Yet then when it's just a post and that's revealed, that's the wake up. It's like, oh, it's just a post. So it's, he goes through this example again and again and again and he's convinced we don't get it and we don't. But I bring it up here because again, back to just the practicality of when we make an assumption, when we think we know and we really don't. And sometimes it's just because we feel like I know for my creating order, I just have to know. I got to figure it out. But in my world, if I could take a breath and lean back, it's going to give me some space to be like, I wonder what it really is. And then to be willing to see the world, see our work, see ourselves. And this is so good for ourselves. It's just so much of a more enlightened being. Because I think that illusion is something that we do to ourselves too. You know, we people who turn on self or have struggles with weight or looks or this or that. I'm not good enough, not enoughness, not worthy enough. Think of those as being all an illusion. And when you're able to turn the light on and just begin to realize you are the same substance as everything else, as God, spirit, source, universe, maybe there's just a nuance of like a spark there.
Yeah, it really gives a different way to look at ourselves.
Mm-hmm. How many times and how often are we seeing ourselves as an illusion, as something that is not?
You know, I want to back up for a second. You just said something that I thought it connected with an article that I was reading, and it was about why people follow cults and fall into cult thinking and things like that. And you kind of brushed on it there, and you said, it's like, well, when you really need an answer to something, you need to know how something works. So we have all this gray area in our lives and in our worlds. Like there's really nothing that's black and white. There's very little. And there's all this gray area where there aren't real answers, so to speak. You know, there's principles that we can follow. There's teachings that we can follow. But as far as like living and guiding and leading your life, like you have to find your values and you have to follow that. You know, you have to find that within you. And when people are so adamant that they must have an answer, they are more apt to believe things that are absolutely not true, like a lower level of not true.
Right.
And it gets them trapped into a belief system and trapped into a way of thinking, and they become very easily controllable that way.
Absolutely. It just checks off the boxes and then you get controlled.
Yeah. And I think about that sometimes in my own life too, where I've like really wanted to have an answer for something. And so I get kind of an answer and I take that answer and that's my answer, right? Like that's the one.
A little need to be right there, Nick.
Yeah, I know I'm the only one who's ever done that. And that unwinding that decision to have that be the answer, you know, winds up taking like 10 times as long as just not having the answer.
It's so sticky.
Yeah.
It is not worthwhile. It's better to be in inquiry.
Yeah, better to be inquiry.
I don't have the answer, so let me keep seeking.
Yeah, or here's the little piece of it.
Right.
Like, I got this little part.
Right.
All right. And now let me continue to explore from there.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Because there's always, and I think about it like levels. It's true at any level. Like you can't really argue with how somebody sees the world and how like really like what they've decided that it is. That's their perception. Like that truly is their reality, just like it's your reality.
Right.
And it is what it is. And it could be totally upside down from what you see and very destructive. And all right, well, that's one level of truth. And then there's an elevated level and an elevated level and an elevated level. And as you bring yourself up those different levels to see it both more accurately as well as more holistically, you reach that higher level of truth, which is where he's ultimately headed in the culmination of this book, which is like, this is the true reality. And he's doing his level best in an amazing way to explain what that is to a mind or minds that have absolutely zero ability to comprehend it.
and he'll just break into that. It's like, what are you talking about self-realization for? You have no idea. It's just such a hoop. Yeah. Well, I wanted to offer just let's go down to the practical level, everyone, and just have a little exercise so that we can take this really lofty teaching and put it into a perspective that will help. What I think could really, I know it certainly helps me, my clients and students, to get to new levels of, you know, whether it's happiness, prosperity, whatever, is grab your journal and write down all those limiting beliefs that show up in you. And whether you're focused on, say, making more money, which is what I help people with a lot, or getting more connected spiritually, which is one of my loves, just write down any limiting belief. And then go through and one by one, speak to it as an illusion, as not real, and rewrite it. You know, write the opposite, write what you want. Could still be an illusion, but it's a lot better illusion than the limiting beliefs. But this whole concept gives us pause to be like, yeah, maybe that just isn't so. You know, so it's kind of a cool way to use this to rebuild the belief system into something that you want to be. That is obviously higher
Right.
in context and flavor.
Yeah, it's a cool way to play around with
Little
it.
journaling this week, guys.
Yeah, it's really good exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like that constant questioning. It just brings it back to that constant questioning.
Right.
Like, is this really
so?
it?
Is it really true?
Yeah. And I think that's a question a lot of people ask too, like even just in their lives, is this all there is?
Right.
Whether it's like people who are stuck in the rat race, like really just stuck in the machine and just churning it out. They're like, there's got to be more to it than this.
Right.
But also on the other end of that, or a different end of that spectrum, is the people who have achieved huge levels of success. And they get there and they think like, that's it. Like, I'm going to be happy and I'm going to be totally fulfilled and it's going to be perfect. And then they're like,
doesn't work.
Wait, but is this all there is?
Exactly.
The same question keeps coming through.
Exactly.
And he's giving the answer. I think in the book, he gives the answer. We have no ability to really comprehend what it is. But
we can seek.
We can just keep seeking.
Keep seeking the higher.
Yeah.
So hope this was fun for you in some way, shape, or form. I just wanted to give you a taste of some of those lofty teachings. And it is called the Vedanta Treatise, The Eternities. We'll put a link in the show notes. But most importantly, have like a little fun with it. Is what in your life have you been willing to believe is so, and it actually isn't? And then take it to the higher.
I like it.
I like it too.
I like it simple.
Let us know. Email info@sourcemovement.com or go ahead to our page and leave some notes. Be great if you shared this podcast. Give us a review on iTunes and all the other places too.
I want to speak about that for a quick second. I was talking with a listener the other day, and she was like trying her darndest to leave us a review on iTunes. And it's like, it's not the simplest thing to do.
It is not.
It's like, you got to like find the right place and the right app and all this
iTunes.
stuff. So anyway, I want to throw that out to all of you. It's just like, we know that that's a big ask. It actually does go a long ways to really help us. But once you do it, just like, send us a message.
Take a screenshot and a selfie or something.
Yeah,
and
like,
tag us on
it,
Instagram.
Yeah. And then we'll send you a little something.
Yeah.
We'll send you a little gift.
That would be great.
I know. I was trying to figure it out there with her, and I'm like, this is a freaking disaster, man. Like, I'm not a dumb person, like I should be able to figure this out.
I love it.
And it was not easy. So we really appreciate you doing that. Whatever platform it is for you, if you leave us a rating and send us a screenshot of it.
We'll send. I know what I'm going to do.
You got something in mind?
I do. I totally do.
Well, so be it then.
I love it.
Yay.
All right, everyone. Much love and see you next week.
Namaste.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.